I'm ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, going to get cold, AccuWeather says, over the next couple of days. So your Pratt Pack's got a little McCafe coffee here, and I have enjoyed many of these cups of coffee with Ted Arnaud. He's on our news line here at Legacy Studios tonight. We begin, as promised, talking about Donald Trump. But you know, Ted, you and I are all about business. Trending within the last couple of minutes, down 2.1% their business in the last quarter. Macy's has decided to close 68 stores and lay off 10,000 people. That is not good news.
No, it's the retail sector there has really gone the way of the Amazon and some of the other retailers that people don't like the big box stores as much anymore, and they've got to really define their product to hit the niche market. Really, when you look at some of the mail order places, they can do it much better.
You know, I've talked to Audrey Gusky, who's the professor of marketing at Duquesne University, a number of times about this issue. One of the things that I think they need to do is to kind of what you call a destination. They have to make people want to come and experience what a great department store is all about. Any thoughts on what they could possibly do to retarget their audience?
Well, it's interesting because you can't target use the same marketing tactics for their entire customer base. You would need to have sectors for younger people, the millennials. You would have to have sections that would change its atmosphere as far as selling to older people. And then, you know, even the sports sectors and everything. You go through them and you just walk through these stores, and it all becomes kind of amorphous. It just changes from one to the other without any real personality. And I think those stores that continue to have personality, the Tiffany's and some of the other specialty stores, they're still doing really quite well.
All right, now I want to talk about something else in the way of business. And we were talking about this with my audience on my radio show on KDK last night. Very excited that Ford has decided to say north of the border, invest $700 million. You know Michigan well. You worked in the automobile industry. You knew a lot of the big players back in the 70s and 80s. They're going to invest $700 million in Flat Rock, Michigan, and that means the creation of 700 new jobs. They say they like Donald Trump's pro-business outlook, although CEO Mark Field said it had nothing to do with their decision, although I may beg to differ. I'd like to get your thoughts.
Well, the pro-business outlook encompasses many things. Probably the biggest factor will be deregulation of some of the highly toxic regulations that have been implemented over the last 8 years. Really, if you look at what's happening for small business, in order to even start up a small business and have a payroll, you almost have to have a full-time accountant on board. And so when you take that and extrapolate it to the big businesses, there's a lot of duplicative regulations. You take that and then lower the potential corporate tax rate. And to me, if they would make it job-oriented, in other words, have any of the reductions in the tax rate related directly to job creation, I think we would turn a monster loose in this country, and you would see jobs being created, you see companies reinvesting, and you would see that middle class, that's the biggest consumer component, really start to grow. And when that sector starts to grow, everything else, including like a Macy's, will grow. But once again, I think Macy's is more of a byproduct of competition than just the economy.
Do you think people like GM, when they see tweets and messages on Facebook and Twitter from the president-elect that, look, if you take your product south of the border, you're going to pay a bigger tax to bring it north of the border. Do you think that makes CEOs, chairmen of the board, president of Fortune 500 companies, stuff like that, messages like that, do they actually stand up and take a hard look at that and also how they run business, do you think?
No, because first of all, Trump couldn't impose a 35% fee. He'd have to run that through Congress. But I think what they do look at is, okay, here we got somebody who's got a pro-business, pro-job growth mentality, and that will come in and affect the business sector. So I don't think a tweet like that is as important as the message that's getting across that we're going to look at a simplified, reduced tax code. We're going to look at reducing tax rates, and we're going to, once again, one of the biggest cost burdens is this regulatory concept at that. I don't think a tweet that says, we're going to start taxing you at 35%. First of all, he cannot do that on his own.
All right, just a couple of more moments. So we're talking to Ted Arnott on our newsline here at Legacy Studios about Donald Trump, President-elect. He'll be sworn in on the 20th of this month, first day on the job, the 21st. Still to come, we'll come back and talk what we know about the NFL. And we're very happy to announce that we'll be back at Coons Markets Cafe this Sunday. Greg Dulles, Bob Dvorak, and me with everything that is the Steelers and Miami Dolphin game. That game, of course, coming up on Saturday. We'll get to that in a little bit. And also the 2017 finalists in the NFL Hall of Fame. Today, though, trending, U.S. intelligence rather upset with the president-elect, especially over these tweets, and a lot of them having to do with the Russian hackers that many people believe, infiltrated the presidential election. Do you think he is going to have to step back a little bit if he wants U.S. intelligence to embrace him? And let's face it, Ted, when you're the president, you need all the backing you can get, and they're the best in the business.
Well, I think in many ways, though, he's playing it smart and making them come and really lay out the case before he makes any decisions. I think, without a doubt, they're going to be able to prove that the Russians had some form of an input, some form of hacking mechanisms. But if you really look at what came out, most of what came out was actually the truth. It's not that they made anything up. But still, you've got to question having any entity or any governmental unit try and disrupt our democracy. So I think he'll wind up taking the Russians on that, but he's going to play it right that he's going to get the information that he wants, and then he'll take his measures against the Russians or whatever they're going to do. And it could very well be it's a phone-to-phone conversation with him and Putin where he says, hey, buddy, knock it off this time. I really mean it. I'm not going to just be saying it, and there's no reset. When I pull the trigger, I'm going to really pull the trigger on you, and I'm not going to announce it, but you're going to feel it. So I think that would be much more effective. And I think what he's doing is just waiting till he's got all of the arrows in his quiver and not just relying on somebody else to give him that information without seeing it firsthand himself, which he supposedly is going to have on Friday. So it'll be an interesting weekend, as it always is, with President-elect Trump.
And Vice President-elect Mike Pence talking about they are going to repeal Obamacare. Is that a realistic possibility? I mean, 20 million Americans will be affected, Ted.
Yeah, but that's not really the case. Many of those 20 million, approximately 16 million, get covered either through Medicare or through a state-subsidized system separate from Obamacare. So I think what you'll see are the Republicans come out with a way to make sure that the full 20 million, even though not all of them are going to be disenfranchised from Obamacare, they'll come out with a system that opens it up to the free market. And I think it'll be a lot more efficient system. And once again, you're going to be looking at trying to do away with some of the regulations that are being imposed on the system that makes it inefficient, so that everybody winds up saving on it, and we got a lot better, fairer system for the people. But I don't think there's an intention for anybody to be disenfranchised from health care. I think they're going to have to work really hard and find a much better way. I mean, there's no reason that you don't have interstate competition with insurance companies. That certainly was a lobbying effort on the part of the insurance companies, and I think that could be broken up.
The great Ted Arnott and I will be back at Legacy Studios before you know it, talking what we love to discuss, life 24/7 in the National Football League. Please stay with us.